Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
And it was actually, what's different about Lynette is this is the only victim that BITTAKER and NORRIS knew prior to the abduction. So BITTAKER used to go into the McDonald's and just gawk at her and stare at her. And her manager and all of her coworkers, testified at trial that he would just come in and stare at her and try to ask her out a million times. And she was 16 and was like, no, you're weird and you're 38.
Anyways, there was a gas station there, and all the people, whoever took her home, all they had to do was make a left turn at that signal. Instead of them taking her home, they dropped her off at that gas station. And then she saw BITTAKER and NORRIS there, recognized them is what I'm now hearing, and agreed to get in the car with them.
It was early in the morning. The neighbors, it was a jogger, and a couple of the neighbors came out, and they realized finally it wasn't a mannequin, but like a mutilated body of a 16-year-old girl. She was lying nude, and she had the coat hanger still wrapped around her neck, the size of a silver dollar. That's how much they had tightened it. And they literally just put her on an ivy bed in front of somebody's house, like someone's front lawn.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
We would like to thank all of our listeners around the world who have been tuning into our podcast for the past year. Without your support, we could not do this. So thank you.
We appreciate all of the great reviews, so please keep them coming as well. Just go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about what we're doing here. Also, feel free to take pieces of the podcast and share with others. Our goal is to get the word out to as many people as possible to let them know what we're doing for victims' families. Any and all help is welcome.
Now on today's episode, we will be talking to Linda HOLTZ, a friend and classmate of Lynette LEDFORD, who was one of Laurence BITTAKER and Roy Norris's victims.
On Halloween in 1979, Lynette LEDFORD was dropped off by friends at a gas station, not far from her house in Shadow Hills, California. She was then picked up by BITTAKER and NORRIS. The next morning, she was found without clothes, brutally murdered in someone's ivy bed in their front yard.
According to Laura, BITTAKER never disputed what he and Norris did to Lynette. In fact, they made an audio recording of Lynette suffering while they killed her. The recording is so horrific that it is used to this day to train FBI agents in order to desensitize them against horrific experiences.
We are pleased to have Linda on the podcast today to hear about Lynette and how this murder affected her and her other friends at Verdugo High School.
So I have my husband and partner in true crime, Rob, with me.
Hello.
Hi there.
Nice to meet you.
So we're really excited to speak to you, Linda. Laura's been telling us so much about you. So I'm just going to have Laura tee up the background and how she met you and what the beginning of your story is, and then we'll kind of jump into it from there.
Okay.
So, Laura, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about how you met Linda and what her backstory is and how you got involved with her?
Linda, did you find me? I'm trying to remember how we initially got in
think
contact.
I think you found me through a gal named Lynette
Oh, yes.
that was a little girl. She was about 11 years old when Lynette LEDFORD worked at McDonald's, and she was like in awe. She told me she was in awe of Lynette working at McDonald's because their name was spelled the same. And so I don't know how she found you, but every year, I mean, since Facebook came alive, every year on Halloween, I would always post that little thing, about, Lynette with her picture and, never forget, rest in peace. And then on her birthday, which I believe is March 3rd is her birthday. And I would do it in March too. So I think she is the one that got me in touch, or got you in touch with me.
Right. I remember. Yeah. Lynette was a little girl, and she would go into McDonald's, and Lynette would sit down with her and like eat lunch or dinner, and because she had no friends. And so Lynette could tell and would go sit with her and just have eat McDonald's with her. Like, that's how sweet she was.
And Lynette is the victim of Laurence BITTAKER.
Yeah.
Correct.
And their little girl's name was Lynette as well. So there were two Lynettes, just so we clarify.
Right.
That.
Yes.
So how did you know Lynette, Linda?
I went to school with her. We went to school together.
Wow.
And we were all at that Halloween party. Gosh, there was hundreds of people. It was like at the end of this road, and I remember just seeing nothing but just people. There were so many people
At the Halloween party?
at the Halloween party. That was the last time we saw her.
Can you tell me a little bit about her? What kind of person she was?
To me, I think she was, to me, the way I when I met her and stuff. I mean, I wasn't weren't friends that we hung out. We were friends at school. But to me, she kind of seemed quiet. And then I heard a story, and I don't know if it was from Laura or not, but I heard a story that one time, I don't know, she brought it. See, I don't want to say because I'm not 100% sure, but I don't know if I've heard a story about her bringing a knife to school that she was going to protect herself from somebody. But to me, I've always thought, when I think of her, I always thought of her as just a sweet, quiet type of girl.
Linda, you did hear that from me. It was the week of the murder. She took the butcher knife out of her kitchen, and her mother asked her why, and she said she was being bullied by some girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. High school was pretty bad as far as the bullying goes. And, there was definitely cliques in our school. You had your cheerleaders, and they were really snotty, and, and the football players, and, there was definitely, there were cliques back then.
So, Laura, why don't you give me a little bit of background on how you found out about Linda and a little bit more about Lynette's story so that we can get people back up to speed, because not everyone knows exactly what happened to her and how integral she was into this case. So why don't you start with that?
Yeah. Lynette was going to Verdugo High School, which is where Linda was going. And she was working at McDonald's part-time after school. She was saving for a car in college. She lived with her mother and her little brother, who she was very, very close to. She almost didn't even go out on Halloween night because she wanted to stay home and take her little brother trick-or-treating, but her mother said, go have some fun. And she went out that night. It's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
She wore a gypsy costume that night. That's what she was before she changed back into her sweater. And it was actually, what's different about Lynette is this is the only victim that BITTAKER and NORRIS knew prior to the abduction. So BITTAKER used to go into the McDonald's and just gawk at her and stare at her. And her manager and all of her coworkers, testified at trial that he would just come in and stare at her and try to ask her out a million times. And she was 16 and was like, no, you're weird and you're 38.
Right.
But they remember him just coming in and literally just sitting at the table, just gawking at her.
So, Linda, you were at that Halloween party. Can you tell me what happened that night, Laura? Do you know what went on?
So the story that I heard, here was the story that I heard, is that she left the Halloween party. I think it was kind of earlier, and she left. She got a ride with some friends, and she lived. I'm trying to get. Hang on a second. She lived probably maybe a mile or two, if that, away from the corner of was it Radford? I'm trying to think of that street. Shadow Hills, California. There was a gas station there. There was a gas station there. And all the people, whoever took her home, all they had to do was make a left turn at that signal. And that signal on the other side of the street, I believe, was Wheatland, I want to say. Instead of them taking her home, they dropped her off at that gas station. And then she saw Bittaker and Norris there, recognized them is what I'm now hearing, and agreed to get in the car with them. Okay, here we go. Sunland, Tuxford. I'm trying to find that street because I want. There's Rise and Shine. Okay, there's.
And Linda, you're friends with one of the guys who found Lynette the next day, right?
Yes. So, okay, my friend Ross Perez lived across the street from where Lynette was found, and Mrs. Grayboys is the one that found her in the bushes. And then Kathy, I know I gave you that name. She's got the yellow house. It was right across the street from her house is where she was found in the bushes. Kathy.
I'd have to look it up, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was Mrs. Gray Boyles. She was the one. She was driving the bus.
No, she
that
was
morning.
jogging. She was on a jog.
One of them. Well, they all thought initially they had walked by Lynette's body and thought it was a mannequin from Halloween.
Right.
So, Laura, what do you think happened? I mean, she went into the car with her friends. They were going to take her home. She went to the gas station instead, and then Bittaker and Norris picked her up?
Well, I'll go into the police discovery and the court transcripts and how I started going one by one. But the first thing that didn't make sense to me, well, first of all, in the case, like leaving her at the gas station, they're like a mile down from her house. I always thought that was very strange. And then the second part was I asked Linda and Lisa, another friend of Lynette's, did she ever do any kind of like hard drugs?
I never saw her, I knew the people that, did drugs at school. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows who everybody was at school. And I never saw her do any drugs.
Yeah, you said like if she went to the party, she would just be like maybe having a beer and smoking some pot, but nothing.
Yeah, there was nothing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when I looked at the toxicology, it just didn't add up because she was such a good student and she's working hard. She's always taking care of her little brother. And I'm looking at the toxicology report and it says PCP, barbiturates, and alcohol. And just mixing 2 of those would be very dangerous, let alone 3.
Right.
And the barbiturates could have been placed into a beer and the PCP could have been easily put into a joint.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And who knows if it was slipped at the party or if they had given it to her. It's kind of a weird thing, And of course, they're not going to say. They're not. No. I don't think Norris and Bittaker they probably never admitted that they drugged her.
So whose Halloween party was it? A friend, like a group of people from high school just had a Halloween party?
It was actually, these Halloween parties, we would go to, or not specifically a Halloween party. Back then, there were a lot of parties that you would just show up at and you had no clue who was throwing it. Mm-hmm. You didn't have any clue. And what's weird is one of my girlfriends, Vicky, that I've known forever, she said that she was part of that Halloween party, that she threw it, but I never remembered her doing that. I just don't remember that. But I know it was at the end of Wentworth Street, Ora Vista and Wentworth in Sunland. So
Laura, when you went through the police discovery, what did you uncover that you found interesting about this, and what wasn't making sense?
Well, a lot. Let's see. The first thing was barbiturates and PCP was found inside Bittaker's motel room 3 weeks later, the same drugs that were in her system. But even more than that is, Linda, don't say their names. I know we've talked about privately, just don't say it while we're recording. Uh-huh. I asked you about the brother and the sister who drove her home, and I asked Lisa, and you guys didn't know their names or have...
No,
I
didn't know their names, and I don't think they wanted, afterwards, I don't think they wanted to admit it.
And did you check? They're not students of Verdugo, right? I think you checked and looked.
Yeah, and I don't believe they were. Yeah, I don't believe that they were students. It's kind of funny. I just looked it up. because it was at the end of the road at Wentworth. Just
Like-
sent you a picture.
Oh yeah. So Cindy and Rob, I know you guys are catching up to the story. This brother and this sister who drove Lynette home, but nobody knows who they are. They didn't go to Verdugo High School. In the police discovery, I find out that they're actually very close to Bittaker and Norris and hung out at the Scott Motel every day. And they were hanging out with Bittaker and Norris right before the party.
That is weird. I never heard that. That is a first.
Do you
Yeah.
think they were trolling for Bittaker and Norris?
Well, I think what happened was, because there was 5 other girls there too, I think the girls were just smoking and drinking at the Scott Motel, and I think they started talking about Lynette, and I think Bittaker just got the idea of like, hey, you know what, it's Halloween, why don't we do this? You put this in her joint, put this in her drink, and Norris and I will pick her up and we'll scare her. And the girls probably thought it was funny and it was a prank gone wrong. That's what I think happened.
Oh.
Is she started carrying the knife in her purse because she was bullied that week. It was that week she was like scared of a group of girls.
So, I mean,
Wow.
it sounds a little bit like Bittaker and Norris, because they were partying with these kids. They got them to do what they wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, probably so. I would believe it. You know, back then kids would do anything for drugs.
So, can you tell me a little bit about Lynette, Laura? Did Bittaker ever acknowledge that he killed her, or does he pretend that he didn't, or what is the situation with her?
Oh no, he openly admits to killing Lynette.
Okay. I just want for people who don't know the story to understand.
No, they both do. And if you listen, this is actually the LEDFORD tape is what's known about this case. If you ever hear about Silence of the Lambs, it's actually always referred back to the LEDFORD tape because John Douglas played the LEDFORD tape for the actors in the movie, and one of the guys ran out of the room crying. So the LEDFORD tape is known to desensitize FBI agents at the academy. It's that horrific. It's not out for the public. Bittaker and Norris took a 17-minute audio clip of the torture, rape, and killing of Lynette LEDFORD. She was only 16 years old at the time.
And the way I found it, if you just Google that "Scream Baby Scream," and that is Lynette. That's the transcript that comes up.
I had
and-
no
and-
idea that they used that for the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, it is really horrific.
Yeah,
hard-
every time I meet an FBI profiler and I tell them what case I'm doing, you can just they all just have that same look in their face because they've all heard it.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. So this poor young girl was being harassed by these girls at school who you think were partying with Bittaker and Norris, so they might have basically led her to them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know how, and I asked, the people in law enforcement how this was missed, how these two, this brother and sister, were partying with Bittaker and Norris right before the Halloween party in the van with them. And then suddenly Lynette LEDFORD gets dropped off by them, but nobody knows who they are. They don't go to Verdugo High School, a mile away from her house, so she has to walk down this one street from the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody looked into that prior.
And no one spoke to these two people?
We never heard anything about it. We all thought it was weird. It was like going, how could a friend, this was everybody was talking at school going, how could somebody do that? All they had to do was turn left and go 1 mile. What made them say, I don't feel like making a left turn. I'm just going to drop you off here at the gas station and you can walk the rest of the way home.
Doesn't
And
make sense.
It was late at night, and we'd never figured that out. Never.
Where are these two people now, this brother and sister?
The brother died a couple years ago, and I just talked to their little brother. I made contact with him and his wife. Weirdly enough, both of their parents worked at San Luis Obispo, a men's colony where Bittaker and Norris met,
Oh my gosh.
which is even weirder. Yeah.
At the same time or at different times?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, the dad retired as a sergeant from there. Very
That
weird.
is very weird.
Very
And
weird.
then their kids,
And then their kids were hanging out
with
at the
Bittaker
Scott
and
Motel.
Norris at the Scott
Yeah.
Motel.
Is that just mere coincidence, or is that just kind of, I don't know what
I
to
mean,
say?
I don't know. I think it's a coincidence unless somehow they were working in the unit Bittaker and Norris were at.
Because I don't know if a parent would, if they knew something like that, and they go, oh yeah, you're hanging out with who? These two guys that were in that jail or prison?
Well, the little brother tried to get his parents on the phone with me and his sister. But they wouldn't talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
So how was Lynette found then?
It was early in the morning. The neighbors, it was a jogger, and a couple of the neighbors came out, and they realized finally it wasn't a mannequin, but like a mutilated body of a 16-year-old girl. She was lying nude, and she had the coat hanger still wrapped around her neck, the size of a silver dollar. That's how much they had tightened it. And they literally just put her on an ivy bed in front of somebody's house, like someone's front lawn.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I just took a picture of the location, and what you see in this picture, because Ross, who lived across the street, told me that right after they had found Lynette's body, these people, they ripped out all of the ivy in their front yard, but the neighbor next door still has ivy, and that wall is new. If that I'm sending, the wall is new. So if you can imagine, this was a yard full of ivy. That's the way back then in the 60s and 70s, everybody down in Shadow Hills, we all had ivy as our landscape. That was our, the thing. And I think a lot of people pulled out the ivy after this.
Wow. And what was everybody in town saying, Linda? At school, I can't even imagine.
Oh my gosh. So at school, it was just, God, it was everything was just quiet. It just didn't seem like there was any laughter. What I remember is, school, you're in high school, everything is noisy, you're laughing with your friends, walking to your classes, and everything was just quiet. It was just like we were all in shock. Because like I said, there was a lot of us from that school that were at that party, and we just couldn't believe it. We could not believe it. And it definitely cured us of, oh, that'll never happen to me thing. We were scared because, see, they used to drive around. We had these two undercover LAPD guys that were on campus, Jeff and Bill. And Bill just passed away recently, but I did get in touch with Jeff. And we used to tell them there was a van that was driving around our school, and they were asking us if we were interested in being a model, that they were trying to recruit some models. They were looking for models. And that was before Lynette was killed. And so the undercover LAPD guys that were at our school, we called them narcs. That was their little name back then. They were keeping their eye out around the school. But I remember that van driving around the school to Burbank High, and drove around there too.
Can you describe what the van looked like?
All I remember, it was like, a whitish silver colored van, light color. And I think it was just like a Chevy van, but nobody, which was kind of good, that nobody was dumb enough to go, oh yeah, pick me, I'll hop in your van. We remember that. It was scary times. It was really scary times.
But then there was all these other kids that were going to this motel and hanging out with him.
See, and that's the thing. Okay, so Scott Motel was in Burbank, and it was pretty close to Burbank High. And so that's why, I'd never go to Burbank. my grandparents lived in Burbank at the time, but I don't remember, anything like that of, hanging out. If somebody, hey, if you go to Scott Motel, you could hang out over here. We never heard any of that.
Laura, do you think that he was using a lot of those kids to troll for him?
Yeah, with Lynette, I definitely think so. I don't think he was actively sending them out to acquire victims or anything like that, or troll for him. But I think he sees the opportunity he saw on Halloween night. And, I've reached out to every witness on this case, and the 6 girls that were there, right, hanging out the Scott Motel when this was happening, when this plan could have been, concocted, not a single one will speak to me of the 6.
Not a single one of them?
No. Not even one. Even one of the daughters got really excited, who loves true crime, and even tried to talk her mother into talking to me, and she wouldn't do it.
Why do you think so?
I really think, if you look at our past episodes that we recorded, there's this underlying theme of destroying innocence. That's what Bittaker always wanted to do, destroy the innocence. The squirt guns with the acid. He wanted to victimize as many people as he could, especially, innocent children. So this is the one, Lynette was the one he left on an ivy bed, in between Verdugo and Burbank High School. So all the kids would know what happened to her. This was a way to victimize all these kids.
Did Bittaker tell you that, or is that something that you're kind of deducing based upon his profile?
Oh, that's just from knowing his behavioral psychology.
What did he tell you about this case?
This one?
Yeah.
Well, I used to ask, I would be like, why did you deviate? Because, you were always in the mountains. No one had any idea that you were a killer. There was no bones, no nothing. You were getting away with murder for years and years and years. And then I said, why? So why leave her on the, it doesn't make, I used to always say it doesn't make sense. Lynette does not make sense. Plus you even went into her work. You knew her, like it was such a risky crime. It was such a deviation from what he was doing. And he was just like, he used to just play it off. And he's like, just look at the police discovery. He's like, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And then it wasn't until after he died that I figured it out by going through the court transcripts and the police discovery and saying, wait a minute, the same people that were hanging out with him at the Scott Motel are the ones that were dropped her off at the gas station, and the same drugs that are, you know, in the evidence list are the ones that she was drugged with. It was just like, okay.
But that doesn't.
I just can't.
But that doesn't answer the question on why he deviated from his normal tactics.
What was it?
I said, but that doesn't tell you why he deviated from his normal tactics on how to.
I think that it was to victimize the kids. Like Linda, you were just saying, like everybody was so scared and quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fear. I mean, he's a sadist. That's what he wants, is to inspire fear in every level.
So by taking his other victims up and burying them in the mountains and hiding them and getting away with it, he wanted to get a little closer to the fire and expose himself and get some notoriety maybe and just see the reaction?
I think it was more, that could be maybe, I really don't think it was notoriety, because he could have done that years ago. I think what it was is like those 6 girls that were talking shit about Lynette, if this is correct, you know, they have to live with this now for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
And that I can't even imagine.
So he killed Lynette in order to torture these other girls mentally.
Yeah, I think it was like 7 birds with 1 stone to him.
Or do you think it was because he was stalking her and she was ignoring him?
I think it was both, yeah. She was rejecting him. He was stalking her. He hears, you know, these girls talking about her. She's carrying the knife because she's scared about being bullied. You know, she was a beautiful girl.
And then they just recruited these 2, brother and sister, to help them.
Yeah.
Because that makes no sense. I mean, she would just randomly go into a car with people. Okay, you're at a party, you know, maybe you want to ride home, and they drop her off at the gas station, and then she disappears.
It makes no sense, yeah.
What did it say in the police report about this brother and sister?
In the police report?
Yeah, did it have anything about them?
Just that they were hanging out at the motel. They were in the back of the van, and Norris wouldn't let anybody go towards the back of the van while Bittaker was in there with the brother and the sister right beforehand. Then the brother and the sister took off to the Halloween party, and they waited an hour and started cruising Van Nuys, I think it was, Boulevard.
They were cruising Van Nuys?
I don't know if that's the correct boulevard, but they waited 1 hour, and then they started cruising.
Because Van Nuys would have been about 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
Where, what boulevard would that have been?
It could be could be Victory.
Huh.
It could be Victory.
Victory?
Victory is the one that's in between both Shadow Hills and Burbank. And that's a pretty long boulevard.
Trying to see Victory, Glen Oaks.
Yeah. Victory's the next one.
Yeah.
And then there's Burbank.
And then there's Burbank. And that's only, like, Burbank's only 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Because my grandparents lived in Burbank. So.
Yeah, they're short rides. We're talking like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, on surface streets, maybe a little bit longer, but it's all very close to each other.
Compared to what there is now. So, yeah, definitely.
How long did these guys live at the Scott Hotel?
It was close to a year. Bittaker was pretty much arrested almost at his 1-year mark. He lived at the Alexandria first, and then he moved over to the Scott Motel.
Well, I feel like there's something with the brother and sister that's suspicious, as well as with their parents.
Well, I think it's interesting the fact that all these other people that you tried to contact, that they don't want to talk anything about it.
Yeah,
And
they don't want to talk. And the brother was one of the only visitors that Bittaker had after he was arrested.
So he went and visited him in prison?
Yeah,
That's kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
After the fact?
after the fact, yeah.
And then this person was never were they questioned by the police?
They were both, questioned by the police, and they both testified in court.
Mm-hmm. They testified against Bittaker and Norris?
Yeah,
Or
I
they
think it was against them.
Oh, okay. All right, so they probably cut some sort of deal.
But then he went to visit him?
Yeah,
And what did he sell him?
it doesn't say. It just had it just has like a list of visitors for Bittaker, and he was one of them.
How soon after? How soon after?
Pretty soon after. I want to say the first couple months he was going in. I mean, yeah.
It's bizarre. There's something not right with that.
Yeah. Don't understand when I asked, the district attorney's office, you have a brother and a sister. Their parents worked at San Luis Obispo, which is just weird. And, they're hanging out with Bittaker Norris, at the Scott Motel in the van. Then they're the ones who dropped Lynette off. Why wasn't this looked at or questioned back in 79?
And what did he say?
That must have been an oversight.
Yeah, for them it's a done deal, so they're not going to go back.
Yeah.
They don't speculate on stuff that they've already gotten convictions on.
But it is suspicious, and it's possible that that brother and sister might have known about other things.
Yeah, I would probably say yeah, because Bittaker was playing, the Jackie Gilliam tape to the teenagers and showing a lot of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very possible. They've seen some other stuff.
I mean, it's very Manson-ish.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he was taking these young people and indoctrinating them by letting them party with him and, giving them drugs and probably getting them alcohol. And it was probably the party place where they can do whatever they want. And then he used that to manipulate them to do things for him. Whether or not they even, unbeknownst to them, that they were basically trolling for him. But this brother and sister is strange because the fact that their parents worked at the place where both those guys were at in San Luis Obispo. And then they connect with them when they get out in Burbank. I mean, to me, that's not a coincidence.
Mm-mm.
If it is a coincidence, a really, really strange coincidence. But I think it's highly unlikely that it is. And Bittaker never told you anything about those two?
No, he said you'll find out. He always wanted me to go back and do the investigation and figure it out and come back to him. And this was one I got after he died. It was when I read the court transcripts right after he died. I saw this 2 names for the people who dropped her off. And I was like, oh my God, that's the same people from the Halloween night at the Scott Motel.
And then what happened to his brother, the guy that dropped her off?
Well, I was talking to the little brother of both of them. He was too young to be hanging out at the Scott Motel, but he knew about Bittaker and Norris. They had talked about it in the family and stuff. And he just said he had talked to his parents and his sister trying to get them to talk to me. And he killed himself right before the Toolbox Killer aired.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Did he know it was coming on?
He did.
Sounds like a guilty conscience.
Mm-hmm. Something's not right there.
Yeah.
How old was he when he killed himself? So that's just recently. It's only last year, right?
Yeah, it was September.
God, if they were my age, because I'm going to be 60, so...
Yeah, probably 50s then.
Yeah, late 50s, yeah. It's a crazy story, but not surprising coming from Bittaker. He was a master manipulator.
A horrible story, that poor girl.
Yeah.
But it's also a warning, don't get in the cars with people you don't know.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's like such a...
Well, that's obvious now, but it wasn't back then.
I know, that's what I'm trying to...
Late 70s, early 80s.
Back then, everybody got in cars with people they didn't know. Everybody was hitchhiking, everybody went to parties. It was a very loose culture. So it's like...
She was pretty drugged from when I looked at the toxicology. It was insane, how heavy the toxicology report came back for her. I'm not even sure she would have been even... I bet she saw them and was feeling sick and, high, and she didn't know what she was from, and probably just waved them down thinking, oh, I recognize their face, and jumped in.
Yeah, I mean, she's probably out of her mind, intoxicated and high.
And if they drugged her.
Yeah, and I mean, especially PCP, if she's never done it, and it's a hallucinogen.
Yep.
I mean, that's terrifying.
Oh, it's terrible. Well, Linda, I'm sorry that you had to experience, living in that environment, having something like that happen. That's really scary.
How has it affected your life, having been part of something like that?
So my daughter, I have a daughter, and she's going to be 29 2 days before me, February. She can recite this whole story to you because she has grown up with it. I ended up, after Shadow Hills, I got a job at 24 at Lockheed, and then I transferred up to the Antelope Valley working at Lockheed, and I had my daughter. And when she was about a year old, my husband and I decided that we did not want to raise her down here. And we moved up to Auburn. And Auburn was a really small town up in Northern California. It was 80 miles west of Reno and about 40 miles east of Sacramento. But even being in the small town, I just instilled it in my daughter. Do not ever get in a vehicle with somebody that you don't know. And if you are ever somewhere and you're being abandoned, let's say she went to a party and she was with friends, I said, you call me, I will come get you. And when she was 16 years old, I made sure that she had a car, because there was no way that I would let her go anywhere with friends. I made her drive herself to wherever she was going, because I did not want her to ever get into this situation. And I mean, yeah, it's haunted me. It still does. It still haunts me. I do have flashbacks when I think about it. And I don't like celebrating Halloween. Halloween's not something I really like doing because it just brings back all the memories. The memories never go away, never goes away. Sure, you can suppress it. It's not like I think about it every single day of my life, but Halloween, it brings it up and I'm crystal clear. And I think about her on her birthday too, because I had an article and I sent it to, I told Laura about it and I said, I got to find this article. And when I was moving to Idaho, I found it. And it was, and I can't remember the girl's name, but it was one of Lynette's best friends. And she was visiting her gravesite. And Dennis McCarthy, are you familiar with Dennis McCarthy?
No.
Okay, he was a writer for LA Times. And he wrote this article. And I believe I did send it to Laura. And it was talking about how it was Lynette's 34th birthday. And Bittaker was suing the prison because he was being served cookies that were crumbled. And the article goes on saying, if Lynette could only taste, a cookie right now, and she can't. And, that she's, here she is, she would have been 34 years old or whatever it was. I can't remember like the article verbatim, but it was kind of like along that line. My mom found it. It was in the LA Times and she sent it to me.
Laura, he sued the prison for his cookies?
Yeah. Yeah, he claimed it was against his civil rights, and Reader's Digest did an article on it too. Yeah, I know. Every time I used to visit him, I, without fail, always got cookies, and I'd break them before I went in the cage with them.
Oh.
Just to troll him. Yeah.
So you would break up the cookies before you would get there?
Yeah, just because he sued over broken cookies.
How did he react to that?
I mean, he laughed because it was me doing it, but...
Unbelievable. He takes the life of this beautiful young girl, and he gets to have cookies. I mean, that's just...
Yeah. And then bitches about it.
And then complains about it. It's disgusting, honestly.
They made a law in California because he would go in the law library and just study, and he learned how to all the little loopholes to sue and stuff, and he was just filing lawsuit after lawsuit, and they made a law that an inmate can only file one lawsuit at a time because of Bittaker.
Well, he shouldn't have been able to do anything.
He liked to play games.
Yeah, he was a sick individual. Linda, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's tragic what happened. Bittaker was one of the most sadistic serial killers out there. And I'm sorry that you had to be a victim to that as well, because even though it wasn't you, those memories make you a victim. And it's terrible that you had to endure something like that at such a young age. When we're impressionable as teenagers, that kind of stuff stays with you for the rest of your life. And it's tragic for the entire community, not just the poor victim, but everybody.
Yeah, I mean, most kids, teenagers in high school, they're usually dealing with death sometimes of other classmates. It's usually a drunk driving or a car accident or something like that. But to have somebody brutally murdered, and you have to live with that. It's got to be a tough pill to swallow.
Right.
Didn't you say that they still they still talk about Lynette, there's still residual fear from what happened?
Oh yeah. And we just had our 40th on our 41st high school reunion in September, and it was brought up. We talked about her, and we all talked about it. How we were devastating it was, and everything. I mean, I posted it on our Verdugo Hills High School Facebook page this year in remembrance of her, and there was a lot of responses. There's a lot of responses. People remember it and how they were there at that party and everything. So yeah, this is something that a lot of us that went to school with her have never forgotten. It'll never go away. It'll never go away. And I mean, it's just talking about it right now, it's thinking back, it was yesterday. We got to move on. We're just smarter. I mean, I know we're a lot smarter, but I found that article that I did send Laura, and it says she would have been 34 today. Instead, Lynette Ledford is frozen forever at 16. A pretty Sun Valley teenager who made the fatal mistake on Halloween night, 1979, and accepted a ride with a mass murderer. And then it goes on. And I can share this with you if you
Oh,
like.
yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'd love to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Because it was a very, very good article. And it's kind of folded, so you'll have to kind of, with your phone, blow it up.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks so
Yes.
much. And Laura, is there anything else you want to add before we go?
Yeah, well, I have a story about the tape. Actually, Linda, I don't even think I told you this one. The tape was one of the left in the van when Bittaker buried everything, and it wasn't found initially. It was found later on. They had to get a warrant for the van specifically. Paul Bynum and Tom Cray, the lead investigators from Hermosa, listened to one part of the tape, and it was just Bittaker talking to his accountant. And it was a Burbank police officer who actually took the tape and turned it over and listened to the whole tape. It was almost missed completely. And that's when he discovered the LEDFORD tape. And it hit him so hard because he found out that there were pictures of his son's girlfriend, who was like a member of his family. And they were actually hunting his son's girlfriend. And he had to listen to the tape thinking about her when he first heard it.
Wow. Yeah, that's horrible. In fact, I have a non-biological, but I call him my grandson. He's 13, and we were just at my daughter's Christmas party. She's a vet tech at this veterinary clinic down the street, and they had the party on Monday. And I don't know why I was talking to one of the other vet techs, and we were talking about this case. And my grandson was sitting right next to me, and he went and he Googled because I told Kim, I said, if you just Google "scream baby scream," it'll come up. My grandson's sitting next to me, pulls out his phone, and he Googles it, and he brings it up, and it's the transcript. And he was reading it, and it was freaking him out.
Wow.
Yeah, the transcripts alone are.
It's horrific. It's not something we would ever air. It's so horrific what this poor girl went through.
Yep.
And
I couldn't imagine. That it's so weird to think about it. It's like when you're thinking about God, how she was tortured and how brutal it was. It's like, and it seemed like she fought, like she was fighting for her life. And it just, it was just brutal. Just brutal.
Laura, and I know everybody has this question, and I know I've asked you this before, but how were you able to sit in the room with him?
That's my question.
That's always the question. Yeah. When you have Cindy and Andrew up in the mountains, that's all you're focused on, is like finding those locations. I just focus straight on the victims.
Yeah. And thank God you did, because you got some answers.
Yeah.
So, again, thank you so much, Linda. It was such a pleasure to meet you. Have a wonderful holiday, Laura.
You too.
And we'll be back soon with you, Laura, on another episode talking about something else. But thank you for sharing this with us. Do you have anything to add?
No. It's a tragic story and horrible. It's just another legacy of his.
So, Cindy, what is it? I know because Laura had, she did a phenomenal job on that oxygen toolbox kit.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what are you doing, or what is making you wanting to pick this up or interview and whatnot? Where is this going?
Oh, okay. So we have a couple of things with Laura. We have a podcast that we're doing about her experiences with her work, and this is an episode of that podcast. We also have a TV show that we've developed and we're pitching right now and trying to sell, and with Laura, and we will based upon her and her life and her work. And yeah, we think Laura is amazing and she's doing amazing work, and we want to do a TV show on her.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. Laura is. She's done a phenomenal job. I mean, it's amazing, and I'm really glad that I was able to help her. Put the pieces together. And like I shared the pictures with you while we were talking, and the last picture that you see is on the left. You see like a block wall with a hedge. That's where my friend Ross lived. And then if you look, you see the ivy, and then right over there next to that ivy, beyond that ivy, is where Lynette was found. And then Kathy lived next door to Ross. So this was all going down right Ross will never forget it. It's like forever embedded in his brain because he was right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was watching the whole thing.
It's tragic.
Yes. And where she was dropped off was only about a mile away from my house. So it was pretty scary because Shadow Hills was our little safe town. Our little Shadow Hills was just a little town, you know, community is what it was. Just it was a horse community. And, you know, we could ride our horses and we would feel safe. And I mean, after this, we, you know, we didn't go out riding by ourselves. We always made sure, you know, it was a buddy system, everything, you know. We started, you know, just being safer and not taking things for granted.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's horrifying and so scary to see a van driving around your neighborhood knowing that something's going on and that there's this monster out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time.
You were welcome. And, you know, I mean, feel free if you guys ever, you know, need to, you know, get me involved again. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah. Well, we want to do this search, Linda, for the girls.
That would be amazing. It would be so nice to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. All right, ladies, have a wonderful evening.
Take care.
Laura will
All
speak
right.
to you later.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you,
Okay,
Linda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
On this season of Partners in True Crime, The Serial Killer Whisperer, we will be following Laura Brand's incredible journey as she continues her groundbreaking study on serial killers.
Each week, we will release never-before-heard recordings of her conversations with the most notorious killers in hopes to get answers for the victims' families, and maybe that could lead to recovering their lost remains.
Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and check out extra content from all of our podcasts. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content.